good to be back. My heart has been here in the sanctuary with you the last several months in Atlanta. My memories at Grace Covenant go as far back as any memory that I have. If you look out into the picture in the hallway of the 200 or so of some of us standing on a hill in what is now, I think, the education building, you will see me in my father's arms. You will see my sister Katie standing next to me. Some of you are in that picture too. You may recognize yourselves. I'm here to say that my faith is built from your witness. As a child, I sat next to Hillary, Emily, and Meredith Turner, who all have different last names now. During worship, about right back there, and we kicked our feet, and we squirmed, and they were going to be baptized. It was their baptism day, I remember that. And many of you made promises to each of them. I think, Emily, you were maybe 5 or 6. Emily and Ryan met in youth group. The rest is history, as they say. Today we baptized their son. How powerful is the circle of life? Our faith is also a circle. We learn it from each other. That's a part of God's plan. Each of us, you and I, and those who are near and those who are far off, we are a part of God's unfolding story. We are the story that God has to tell the world. For good or for ill, we impact one another's lives and one another's faith. During the last decade, sociologists and religion scholars tackled a study to assess this. They asked 3,000 youth and young adults about the relationship between their faith, religion, and their lives. Since I know you'll want to look this up when you go home, for a little light reading, it's called the National Study of Youth and Religion. Researchers called youth on the telephone. They talked to them in person. They asked them questions like, tell us who God is. Tell us if you've seen anyone pray. Do you see your parents, the adults closest to you, engage in things that are faithful? Do you see them live out their faith? What does it tell you about the world? What does that tell you about the church? The study's still going on, but after 3 waves of it, the thing that we've begun to notice is that young people's relationship to spiritual life has very little to do with their generation or the times that we live in. Their faith, or not, is modeled after the adults that they know and trust. A lot of these youth had a tough time answering questions about God. They simply hadn't observed the adults in their lives speak consistently and act with conviction based on who they believed God to be. After thinking about this study for some time, I could see how this would play out, even in a very special kind of church. The thing about the church is, as you all know, that it's filled with us, human beings. And we live in complex times, and we see events from our own perspectives. And we disappoint each other. Maybe at church we talk about forgiveness, but it's hard to actually forgive each other. My family knows I'm the worst at forgiveness. I have a hard time with it. And being wrong. So how do we live that out? Maybe we worship regularly. We're here in the pews on Sunday morning, but it's hard to bridge that disconnect between Monday. You go home, you forget how it is to take the principles we talk about as a gathered body and to challenge ourselves to live based on what we believe. The world needs the witness of ordinary people like you and me. Sometimes our lives feel distanced from God, whose story of hope and justice we believe in. We need people participating in God's story with extraordinary acts of obedience. so that we can see the truth and the beauty of that story alive in front of us in people's lives. Mom and Dad told me once about the time when GCPC was just a church baby. You were all sitting in a room wondering if you could afford to build this church that we're sitting in now. So I think pieces of paper were handed out, and everybody got one, and families and individuals and spouses and cousins and everybody wrote down the number, the amount of money that they could give to go into the pot that would be counted to build this church. And so they passed them out. People wrote down their numbers, and the elders collected them, and they counted them, and it wasn't enough. So they passed them out again. Pieces of paper, asked them to pray, can you give more? And everyone wrote down a number, maybe some of them the same, maybe some of them different numbers. They collected them, they counted them, it wasn't enough. Twice and a third time. My parents told me how in that moment they decided to make a great leap and give far more than they expected to give. This is something you told me when I was young, and it had an impact on me, and I think that exercise had an impact on you as well, where you decide to let your life speak. Because we're sitting here today, we know that others did the same thing. Many of you. They collected the pieces of paper, they counted them up, there was enough. The church was built. We walked down from the elementary school down the street. Some of you are nodding. College Boulevard, dug into the dirt. I think I'm conflating stories here, but it's all part of my narrative. The neighbors saw not just that we wanted to build a church for ourselves, but that we wanted to give this to the world. That's how the church grows. This was for everybody. God is not yet through with you or with this church. The grace in Grace Covenant and the greatness here, its potential can once again be ignited so as to bear fruit for many years to come. That's happening today. The world can seem complicated. It is complicated, which is why it is so tremendously important that we begin acting with more and more conviction in our lives because of who we believe in. The gospel is a burden on all of us who choose to let that be our narrative, but it is a light burden in the sense that the more we bear that burden, the more we are borne by it. We have many masters: fear, commercialism, acquisitiveness, trying to be perfect. You can add to the list, I'm sure. I actually invite you to think about it. I admit that I seem to believe, at least behaviorally, that if I stay up in the middle of the night and worry about these things, that I'll begin to have control over them. But it hasn't happened yet. Let's just consider the people of Paris. One person in particular, Antoine Léry, lost his wife 2 weeks ago at the Bataclan Theater. I saw his story shared on Facebook this weekend, and it struck me as one of the most compelling examples of faith and strength and love that I have ever seen. He has every right to be fearful. None of us would fault him if he had decided to wait for things to get better or simply given up entirely. Instead, Antoine responds to the world with grace and conviction, saying what perhaps only he can say, because it is only his story. It is his life and witness. He writes in his Facebook post, "On Friday night, you stole away the life of an exceptional being, the love of my life, the mother of my son. But you will not have my hatred. I do not know who you are, and I do not want to know. If the God for whom you kill so blindly made us in his image, each bullet in my wife's body would have been a wound in his heart. Therefore, I will not give you the gift of hating you. You have obviously sought it, but responding to you with anger would be to give in to the same ignorance that has made you what you are. You want me to be afraid? To cast a mistrustful eye on my fellow citizens? To sacrifice my freedom for security? He continues, I saw her this morning, finally, after nights and days of waiting. She was just as beautiful as when she left on Friday night. As beautiful as when I fell madly in love with her 12 years ago. Of course, I'm devastated with grief. I will give you that tiny victory. But this will be a short-term grief. I know that she will join us every day, and that we will find each other again in the paradise of free souls. We are only two now, my son and I. But we are more powerful than all the world's armies. In any case, I have no more time to waste on you. I need to get back to Melvin, who is waking up from his afternoon nap. He's just 17 months old. He'll eat his snack like every day, and then we'll play like every day. And every day of his life, this little boy will insult you with his happiness and his freedom, because you don't have his hatred either. Friends, the purpose of the gospel is that we are saved in some far-off time and place. The purpose of the gospel is that we are witnesses. Antoine Leroux has chosen to live as a witness. He will allow the mundane and extraordinary moments of his life to shape not only his future, but ours as well. His son will learn by watching his dad. We will all learn from watching Melvin's dad. Thank God this burden is shared by all of us, inspired by courage of people like him, his faith, his willingness to let his life speak. We share that same yoke. We are about to baptize Liam Hussey. I'm lucky enough to get to hold him, but you all are lucky enough to do the heavy, long-term lifting. I pray that he will be a witness as he grows and finds his own voice of love and hope. The world needs somebody like Liam. He is a sign of God's yes to us that the world and the church go on. And Liam will need somebody like you. He will be watching how you respond to the challenges and the powers of darkness that confront us and this church. He will watch whether we in the church obey Jesus Christ or other masters. I read Abraham Lincoln's Thanksgiving address last night from 1863, and it struck me how many similarities we share with those who are in the midst of a civil war. It is of great consequence whether Thanksgiving becomes for us a custom on Thursday to say grace around the dinner table, or a decision point that marks a new way of life for us, one in which the world turns from despair to hope because of the simple and the profound actions and witnesses of committed people. Friends, do not fear the powers of darkness. They will not have the final word. And they will be defeated every time that you and I, or our children, or our neighbors, or witnesses like Antoine live in faithfulness as those who are called to be children of light. The burden is light because we do not drive that yoke. Jesus does. Not ISIS, not perfectionism, not even you. Jesus is only asking that we plow the ground as he leads. God tells God's people in Isaiah these words that you said to me on my ordination day in this sanctuary. I will be with you. I will not leave you. I will accomplish that which I have promised through you. For as the rain and snow come down from heaven and do not return there until they have watered the earth, making it bring forth and sprout, giving seed to the sower and bread to the eater, so shall my word be that goes out from my mouth, says the Lord. It will not return to me empty, but will accomplish that which I purpose and succeed in the thing for which I sent it. Nearly 600 years ago, your friend and mine, Erasmus of Rotterdam, told a tale of Jesus when he returned to heaven after his time on earth. Jesus was in heaven, and the angels gathered around to hear from Jesus about what had happened to him. Jesus told of the miracles, the people that he had met and loved, his teaching, and his death and resurrection. Afterward, Michael, the archangel, asked, "But Lord, what happens now?" Jesus replied, "I have left behind men and women who will declare my message. With their love, they will establish and build my church." "But," Michael asked, "what if they fail? What then?" Jesus answered, "I have no other plan." Friends, let your life speak. Amen.